In my mind, it is my deep belief that procrastination is the bitch of resistance, that resistance is this force that we succumb to all too often. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the force that we want to succumb to? And I believe it is discipline. Discipline is an action. Discipline is a choice. Discipline builds momentum. Discipline separates us from every competitor, because while the competitors may be debating the usefulness of discipline, I am busy living it. And while I live it, I am refining, sharpening, and clarifying what's going on in my mind. So discipline leads to clarity. Discipline feeds confidence. Discipline allows me to enact charm. Discipline clears my mind again so that I can pursue curiosity. When we talked about curiosity, I believe we said, one of us said, lead with curiosity, back it up with technique. And the technique, as far as I'm concerned, is that when I follow a regular proven path, again, starts with a verb, starts with an action, that is all up here. And I remember speaking to someone, a good friend of mine, and I said, well, that's really a mental discipline. And he leaned forward, put his coffee cup down, and he said, John, every discipline is a mental discipline. Every discipline is a mental discipline. So part of the reason I'm fired up about this is that discipline is not the enemy of freedom. Discipline is the key to freedom, because what it does is it says, these are the choices I'm making. These are the actions I will take. We will talk extensively about precision. And I think that we've mentioned before that precision is how we do what we do. Discipline is the fact that we do it, and we do it consistently and regularly. Since we need to measure something in order to be able to improve anything, of course, the first thing we measure is how close are we to our quota. And then, being former sales managers, Doug, you and I know, okay, well, you're not hitting your quota. Let's figure out why. And we want to do some kind of, mental surgery. We want to open that up and say, are you completing these actions? Are you completing these tasks? Are you following a regular proven path? When I'm on the phone with someone who has been hired as an enterprise sales representative, whose minimum production is $1 million of revenue per year, and I ask that person, so how many calls do you make? And the answer is, I don't know, 30 or 40. And I say, a day? And they say, a week. I'm horrified because you are not even in the game if you're doing 30 to 40 calls a week as an enterprise salesperson. Oh, well, there are these drip marketing plans, and there's, our social media, and there's networking. That's all great, fun, and wonderful. But unless you are doing something to get your name and the name of your company and the identification of your service in front of people on some regular, consistent basis, you're not showing up on the playing field. And part of the reason that I'm so passionate about discipline is that I think that we have been sold a bill of goods. Those folks that haven't heard that phrase before, what that means is that we have been told that this is something that's true. And because we've been told it so many times, we believe that it's true. It's not the case. The concept of time management is the great business lie. There is no such thing as time management. We cannot manage time. Time moves on whether we like it or not, and time doesn't much care about us. Time is some, I don't know, ethereal thing. Because if you think about it, the clock and the calendar do not appear in nature. Man invented the clock and the calendar because we need a frame of reference.
I would say that discipline isn't repetition. Discipline is a continued commitment to something. So,
which begs repetition.
It begs repetition and review, i.e., a very disciplined person that picks up the phone and gets hung up on 1,000 times in a row and doesn't attempt to improve that step that repetition isn't the full definition, because you could repeat the same mistake over and over and over again.
True.
And we have to also be sensitive to the fact that the connotations and definitions, there's multiple definitions of discipline, and the primary is punishment. So that's why self is usually put in front of discipline so often. And we're talking about applications that are about the self. So when we speak to discipline, we're talking truly about self-discipline. We're not talking about the discipline of others.
Right.
But it's interesting because when you look at discipline in its definitive form, there's interesting things that come out, like in religion. So I found that as discipline is outlined in Buddhist ethics in the Noble Eightfold Path, they say it is the element of commitment to harmony and self-restraint, as has been described as a moral discipline. So
it's a huge word in there for me, as you know, the word harmony.
Oh, I like commitment. So yeah, but harmony is there. The reason I like commitment is because
I like commitment too, man. I've been married 37 years. Okay.
Well, you need harmony to maintain commitment.
Absolutely. And sometimes it goes wildly out of tune. I mean, I can point to experiences within the last 24 hours, but here's the thing. We're both so committed to getting back into harmony. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen easily.
No.
It expects and it deserves some humility. And that is a tough thing to swallow. So you're saying, well, for you, it's harmony. For me, it's commitment. Hey, man, I am down with commitment. I am down to it's 6 o'clock. Both, absolutely. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's time for me to go through my lesson. I go through my guitar lesson. So read that Buddhist definition to me one more time.
The element of commitment to harmony and self-restraint has been described as a moral discipline.
A moral discipline, self-restraint. So what am I doing that is serving the greater good? How can I make a contribution? And notice that none of that is about wrestling time to the ground and managing it. Well, you said earlier, it is about correction or what was the word?
Punishment.
Punishment.
Self-discipline is about commitment. And I think that when we're talking,
but that's a level of punishment, because
it is.
Is it punishment or is it sacrifice? Because
I think it's discomfort. I think what it is. And so I say a lot of times to my, and I've said this even on our calls, and I used to say this a lot to my team prior to this, because, in that startup world, there's a lot of days where you're like, why the hell am I doing this? When your eyes are bleeding and you're staring.
Self-employment world too, brother.
Oh yeah, entrepreneurship. Well, the beauty I found of entrepreneurship is I know why I'm doing it. My eyes are still bleeding, but I know why I'm doing it.
Right.
Discipline, as I see it, as an application in the way that we are specifically applying it to being a better seller, a bionic seller, is about, and this is the line I was using, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I used to tell my team that we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, or as I most commonly say for myself, I am uncomfortable being comfortable. Because when I'm comfortable, I have to either convince myself it's okay, you've worked hard, you can enjoy this moment of not worrying about anything. But the discomfort I've gotten used to is there's always a sense of change that has to happen. A lot of time that's agitation. It's not pain, it's just discomfort. It's something's different here. I don't know if I like it. So when we talk about a seller and commitment and discipline comes in a lot of forms. Discipline comes in a commitment to something you don't see results from quickly. So a disciplined athlete is going to keep working out, keep hitting those numbers, keep training, even though they might not see the win on the field or in the court or today, they're still going to compete internally and push themselves to drive that. That's discipline. But somebody walking up somebody doing the Sisyphus thing, just banging their head into a wall all day. And I don't think that's seen.
Well, let's be clear on who Sisyphus was for folks who've never heard of him. He did not bang his head against the wall. He was cursed to pushing a boulder up an incline all day, and then every morning having to push the same boulder up. So that I want to make sure that we're very clear on the references we're making, because he never got any reward.
No, and he repeated the action. every single day.
Every single day. He was cursed.
Yeah. And
Now,
so, and although they've got the Einstein quote over there that they say it's the definition of insanity, I always like to be sensitive to the fact that is not the definition of insanity. That's the definition of stupidity. Insanity is truly either a chemical or a distortion that
it's a loss of control.
Nobody who's insane is pushing anything up a hill just for the sake to do it again. There's something else going on, but it's the definition of stupidity or ignorance. It's if this keeps going on.
Maybe he was trying to be kind.
I think he
Professor Einstein.
Yeah, except to anybody with mental health issues. But I think the issue is that what we look at a lot of times is that when people say that, oh, to do something the same way and expect the same results is insane. Well, it's stupid, but to do something the same way, look at the results and alter it and change it and commit to making it better. That's not insane. In fact, that is discipline. Discipline is pushing the rock up the hill every day, knowing it's going to go back down, but every day looking and seeing if there's a way that you can make it faster, better, or keep
getting it further up the hill,
or finding somewhere to place it.
Right.
If you're just going to do the same thing and not learn, not improve, that's not discipline. That's just repetitive. So when I get into the definition of repetitive versus discipline, discipline is doing it with an intent to improve, where repetition is just doing it over and over again. Now, I don't have a problem with repetition. If somebody realizes they need to get a certain amount of steps every day to get exercise, or, but a drummer is still listening where to hit.
Well, but there's no way that I could play along with a band unless I had done all of the repetition up front. I mean, I have clear images of me 9 years old being told, okay, John, go home and practice this for 20 minutes every day. And finding that after 2 weeks, I was practicing it for an hour because it required at 9 years old, I didn't realize because it required mental focus, but also when I was 10 and I was the lead snare drum player in orchestra, there was a reason for that. And the reason was that I put in more work than anyone else. And it wasn't like I was thumping my chest. It was like the teacher would say, all right, Clemson, you're going to play that part. And all the guys would turn their head and, okay, how much do you practice? Well, I don't practice. Well, there you go. So practice, and you were talking earlier about practice, you were talking about repetition, and you were talking about the discomfort. What do they all yield?
Hopefully positive results.
Rewards, right? So what is discipline about? Discipline is about current discomfort for future reward. Current discomfort for future reward. And every selling conversation is about the future. Because if you're closing, then you're making the transition from selling them to now having to deliver. Once you put it in the record, once you have exerted the effort, the focused effort, it can never be taken away. And the longer we allow between periods of exercising discipline, the harder we have to work to get back up on the horse, to be able to strum the guitar without a buzz, to be able to put the blade into the sheath without a sound, to put the ball through the basket and get nothing but net. The more time we allow between those practice sessions, the harder it is to climb back up the hill. And to me, it keeps going back to risk, because change and improvement only come out of risk. And risk is a healthy thing because it keeps pushing out that border of our comfort zone. Your famous phrase, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think what you really want is you want people to be accustomed to being uncomfortable so that risk is something that they are familiar with. Risk should be a welcome friend, not something that they keep at arm's length.
Well, risk is just a consideration, I think. I think that risk is there. Risk is always there. It's just something that we acknowledge. And when you say somebody doesn't take any risks, that's a risk in itself. I can, we just had a pandemic. I tell you all of the companies that I know that went out of business because they weren't risk takers. That was the greatest risk of all, the failure to innovate. So when we talk about discipline, and I think about discipline on the seller's level, I think it's very specific to the fact that they have to be committed to improvement. So if somebody's really good at something,
there's that word again, committed.
Yeah. Well, and interesting when you use these words that sometimes I should be committed for being so committed. But the reality is a commitment to self-improvement, however it may be, is the core of what a bionic seller requires in the application of discipline. It's not about just repetition. It's not about getting up every day and doing the same thing over. It's not just about doing the things you don't like or the things that make you uncomfortable. It's about improvement.